Welcome to everyone who is joining us. Thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. My name is Stephanie Lopez. I am the program manager at LatinasRepresent. LatinasRepresent is an initiative of the National Hispanic Leadership Agenda, NHLA for short, which is a national nonpartisan coalition made up of about 40 of the nation's leading Latino advocacy organizations that are working together to advance Latinos in the US. As an initiative, LatinasRepresent focuses on empowering Latinas to transform our democracy to be more reflective and inclusive. We are so happy that each of you has taken time out of your day today to be part of this incredible conversation. And we're especially happy to have been able to partner with our NHLA coalition member, GreenLatinos, to present today's event, a conversation with Latina Environmental Justice Champions. We are super excited that we're having this event during Latino Conservation Week because we want to celebrate the legacy and leadership of Latinas in the environmental justice and conservation spaces, which we know to have a history of exclusion for our communities. Today, we have an incredible lineup of speakers, and I'm going to take a moment to introduce one of them, which is also the person that helped put this event together with me. She is Mariana del Valle Prieto Cervantes from GreenLatinos. She works as the Water Equity and Ocean Program Manager there. And she has committed her life to advocating for the Latinx community in terms of the environmental movement. She is a proud immigrant from Mexico and was raised in California's Central Coast. Mariana obtained her degree as a first-generation student in environmental studies with a concentration in sustainable communities. And at GreenLatinos, she focuses on water equity, ocean conservation, and coastal access priorities at the national level. With these policy priorities in mind, Mariana works to educate policymakers, stakeholders, and the public at large to positively impact change for clean and affordable water and ocean protection with our comunidades in mind. And before I let Mariana introduce GreenLatinos and the rest of our speakers, I want to remind everyone that the NHLA is a nonpartisan organization, that we do not endorse or oppose any candidate, party, or platform. Therefore, all of our speakers this evening are participating in a nonpartisan capacity. So Mariana, take it away.
Yes, thank you so much, Stephanie. Thank you, LatinasRepresent, and thank you to our panelists that are here today, some amazing Latinas that we're joined with. So I'm really excited to introduce them to you all today. Just a little bit about GreenLatinos. GreenLatinos is an active comunidad of Latino, Latina, Latinx leaders emboldened by the power and wisdom of our culture, united to demand equity and dismantle racism, resourced to win our environmental conservation and climate justice battles, and driven to secure our political, economic, cultural, and environmental liberation, or liberación ambiental. All the women in today's panel have incredible accomplishments. Some of them I have looked up for many years, and I'm really excited to be sharing space with them today. So I'll go over a little bit of their highlights of their bios, and then we'll kind of get it started, and they can talk a little bit about the amazing work that they have done here in the environmental movement. So I'm going to start with Irma. Irma Muñoz is the founder president of Mujeres de la Tierra, an environmental equity nonprofit focused on healing La Madre Tierra and redefining the traditional green dialogue. She currently serves on the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy Board of Directors as an appointee of the Mayor of Los Angeles and is a governor's appointee to the Los Angeles County Regional Water Quality Control Board. She has received numerous honors of recognition, including 2021 Forbes 50 Over 50 list of Women for Sustainability of La Madre Tierra. She also received the GreenLatinos 2019 Living Legacy Award. Her proudest achievement is serving as a presidential appointee in the U.S. Small Business Administration for the Clinton administration. Welcome, Irma. Next, we have Jessica Loya, is an environmental equity policy and campaign strategist. She serves as a coalition manager for the Next 100 Coalition, which is the only organized space focused on public land conservation and recreation that is led and centers BIPOC communities at the national level. She works with organizations, coalitions, and legislators to secure protections for public lands, climate, clean water, clean air, and environmental justice for communities across the country. Some of her previous experience include working at the White House Council on Environmental Quality, Office of Public Engagement, and with the Biden-Harris transition team. And last but not least, we have Raquel. Raquel Gomez is an avid outdoor adventurist and specialist with over 20 years of experience in youth programming. Her youth development work spans across various programs in several states around the US. She started a nonprofit in June 2020 called Atabey Outdoors, which is located in Phoenix, Arizona, and is committed to serving Black and brown girls who want to explore outside but don't feel safe and or lack the resources and general information on how to adventure outdoors. Again, welcome to you all. We would love to learn a little bit about your work from your own words. So Irma, if you want to kick us off, we would love to hear more.
Okay, well, great. Thank you. Thank you for that wonderful introduction, and what an honor it is to be a part of this incredible group of women. People always ask me, why did I start Mujeres de la Tierra? I founded the organization over 15 years ago after I left the Clinton administration, and I wanted a kickback job because working for a presidential administration is like a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week job. And I wanted to relax because I was always traveling. So I started looking, I decided, you know what, let me just stay at home and, go to tea parties and plant a vegetable garden. Well, that lasted 2 weeks. I got real bored real quick. So I decided to get something that was a lot calmer. And so I went to apply for a job at a highly recognized environmental organization in Los Angeles. They were looking for a Latina who was going to interface with the Latino community. I lasted there 7 months because there was unfortunately a lot of racism towards people of color in those days. This was 15 years ago. And I felt that I was being used because I was a Latina and because I had connections in the Latino community. And I just didn't like what was seen. So I would go to work really angry a lot of the times. And so I said, you know what, instead of going to work angry, why don't you do something about it? So I was sitting under a tree and I decided, I like the name Mujeres de la Tierra. Let's start an environmental organization, which I knew nothing about nonprofits, but it didn't stop me because I thought it was really important that women and their children should have their own platform for which to speak up and speak out, and that they should lead and own their issues in their neighborhood. In those days, there were a lot of Anglo-led environmental organizations that would come into our communities to save our day. And I realized we don't need our day saved by others. We can save our own days. We're just as intelligent. We are, if you really look at a lot of the environmental practices, they all have indigenous roots, and I keep reminding that of people. And our organization it isn't about us, it's about the women that we inspire, because they teach us so much. And our attitude is we always learn more from them than they would from us. And most of our work is done in Spanish. We deal with teaching folks about contaminated lands, especially along the Los Angeles River. And not only did we tell them the history of the land, who are the original inhabitants, who contaminated the land, what is it contaminated with, what is the impact to family health and community health, because I think that they need to know everything, because our community is very intelligent and very smart, and they want to know facts instead of fear. People put fear in their hearts, and I put facts in their head. And so I'm very proud of the work that we've done. We've created a number of women's organizations, and we teach them to fly, and they do it because they want to be on their own. They want to take on their issues, their perspective. The most important thing that we've done is that we establish our community engagement through community listening, and through what I call a relevant cultural lens, because you cannot just translate a brochure and think that you're communicating with the people or educating them. So everything is done through a cultural lens and through community listening. And so we have pláticas, and we create to wrap up, because I know this is a short, we create a relevant cultural lens is we create projects with the community in mind. For example, I'll give you 2 examples. We have, and we're still experiencing a very serious drought in the state of California. And so they wanted me to put together a brochure on saving water and conserving water. So what we did is I said, okay, let's do a telenovela in the park. So we came up with a cast. We knew nothing about writing the script, acting, makeup, but who doesn't like a good telenovela? So what we did is that we taught people, it's focused around a family called Los Cabezones, who love using plastic, who love wasting water, and people from the ages of 5 to 85 laugh. And so we educate while we entertain at the same time. The other thing we have is a lot of plastics pollution. So I came up with this idea of let's make a demonio de la basura, because we all have a different, most of the Latin Americans Latinos have a different relationship with the devil. We burn it, we make fun of it, we poke it, we're not afraid of it. And so we created a 15-foot diablo, a devil, all made out of plastics. Plastic bottles, small and big, it lights up, and we take it into processions so that people understand the evils of plastics pollution and the responsibility not to litter their neighborhoods. So thank you for the time to explain. I can talk forever about Mujeres. It's my heart and soul. And our whole premise is to inspire women so that they can take the leadership and ownership of their issues.
Thank you so much, Irma. A lot of comments about the facts over fear. So I really, really love that you're doing that con nuestras comunidades and celebrating the work that we do como Latinos y Latinas. Next, Jessica, do you want to tell us a little bit more about your work?
Yeah, of course. And honestly, I could give all of my time to Irma because I also want to just learn more and learn from her and the amazing, excellent work that she has done. And to be honest, the pathway that she's created for other women like myself to feel comfortable in spaces that are predominantly white and predominantly male. To really, I've had the opportunity to see Irma in meetings and to meet her in person and to be empowered by her and for her to share with me the power of my voice, right? And the work that I do and the spaces that I engage in. And so, I'll start off by first thanking Irma for all of her work for our community and truly being a living legend in the work of environmental justice for Latinos and Latinas alike. I grew up in the communities that Irma supports. The parks that my single mother of 4 took her children to for community care, right? Community childcare. That's what our open parks and spaces can be for our community. Spaces of learning, of family connection. Many of them, Irma, I think I've shared this story with you, are tied back very directly to the spaces that I grew up in, went to preschool in, played in the sandboxes of Cypress Park and others. And, that connection to parks from a very early age, instilled in me by my mother, either because she knew that these places were important as community gathering spaces, but also as a community helping her, a single mother of 4, raise her children, that I saw how important these spaces are. And I also recognized how limited these spaces were for the actual community that needed them in Los Angeles and in Northeast Los Angeles. And growing up in this space, going to public school in Los Angeles and seeing that our science programs were limited in what they were teaching us. And thankfully, I went to a public school that had an AP environmental science class, and that instructor took a liking to, or noticed that I took a liking to the issues of the environment and really helped me pursue that space. Eventually going to UC Santa Cruz, which my background is the Redwood Forest. If folks see how familiar that is, it's the Redwood Forest of Northern California, a very unique place. Across the world, there is no other place where you can find a redwood forest similar to that. So it is a very unique and spiritually connecting place, really, is what I found. I come from a family of immigrants. My father was an immigrant of Mexico. My mother, the daughter of farm workers, of migrant farm workers from central Mexico that worked the lands all through the southern border of the United States and up and through the Central Valley before settling and building a home and a community in Northeast Los Angeles, where I was born. When I went to school at UC Santa Cruz, it's the first time I'd ever been surrounded by trees. First time I'd ever heard silence, like true silence. And it shook me. And it reawakened in me a connection to land, to nature, to the natural world that had been broken by generations of hard work, of struggle. And I was able to reconnect with this lovely place behind me and reconnect with my love for nature and my community, and really began my journey of engaging my community and my own family in reconnecting that bond and how important that is to our mental health, to our public health, and essentially to our survival, both in advocating for our natural spaces and climate issues. I love seeing that NHLA, LatinasRepresent, and GreenLatinos are moving forward on this. I had the pleasure of working at GreenLatinos as their national policy and program director for 2 years. And under those 2 years, really mobilized within the National Hispanic Leadership Agenda, NHLA, the importance of bringing forward a comprehensive environmental policy agenda for our community. Previous to that, NHLA had not added environment and energy policy into their agenda that they release that really influences each administration and Congress as to what issues are important to our communities. But we saw poll after poll, listening to community after community, that issues of the environment were above and beyond important to them. They were more important to them sometimes than jobs, more important to them by data. I'd like to say more important by data firms, because we know that it's not more important than any one issue. They just see the intersection of environmental issues to other issues they experience. And so, I've had the pleasure of supporting and working with communities and with leaders like Irma to uplift those issues at the national level through NHLA, GreenLatinos, and now specifically through the Next 100 Coalition, coming back to my love of parks and conservation, and really beginning to say that the movement to protect and increase localized green space, you may call it a park, you may call it green space, it may be a community garden or a greenway along a river, or revitalizing a river that has been channelized, right, back to green infrastructure, really reconnecting the importance that green spaces, conservation, rematriation of the land to Indigenous people is critical to our success as communities and our success as a nation state in fighting against climate change and dealing with water issues and other issues of the environment that very much intersect our personal lives. So I'll also stop so we could get to questions, but I'd love to hear from Raquel.
Raquel, tell us a little bit more about you and your work, why you came into this space, how you got your start in the field.
All right. Hi, everybody. First of all, thank you for having me. Glad to be here. Are you able to hear me? Because everyone's frozen on my end.
We can hear you.
All right, great. Cool. So I grew up in predominantly white schools and neighborhoods. I guess lucky and blessed to have been exposed to a lot of outdoor adventure at a very young age. Mostly, I attribute that to my father's love for adventure. He immigrated here to New York City from the Dominican Republic. And so he taught me a lot about swimming and being outdoors. And so I found a love for that at a very young age. But doing all that stuff with only white people when I was younger, it felt almost as if I was living a double life, like I had to go hang out with my white friends to be able to enjoy these activities that I love so much. And then coming back to my home where, there was a lot of criticizing me for wanting to do those activities because it wasn't anything that they enjoyed doing or wanted to do. It was only for white people. So there was a lot of struggle as a young kid of like trying to figure out what exactly who I am as a person, what my identity was tied to, whether it was the outdoors or whether it was the Hispanic culture or the community. But as I grew up, I started to become a little more confident in the fact that I do enjoy the outdoors, and I started to wonder why some people had access to certain parks, certain environments, why they had access to cleaner water than other people, why there were smoother roads in some of my friends' neighborhoods. I just started to ask a lot of questions concerning the environment and get a little more interested in that. And then at the same time, I began working with children and seeing that a lot of the children that I was working with, mainly Black and brown youth, didn't really know what hiking was, or they didn't know what canoeing was or camping. They had never been camping where I was from. So that to me kind of blew my mind, because I'm like, well, let me show you all the things. Like I love this stuff. Like let me talk to you a little bit about why it's so important for us to take care of our environment and how our behaviors directly impact the environment around us. So I've been working with kids since I was a kid. And so I had, throughout my career, I had a lot of opportunities to create positions within the organizations that I was in that would allow me to expose more Black and brown youth to outdoors. And I still was only recreating with white folks. And as I moved through my career, I was doing after school programs at Boys and Girls Club up until recently, and just decided that I was kind of tired of dealing with red tape as far as being able to bring the kids to do outdoor activities. I felt like there was a need for these kids to be outdoors and to connect to their environment, to the land, to understand how their actions in the city directly impact our climate change, environmental justice, conservation, all of those things. And these organizations weren't allowing me to do that. So that's when I decided I wanted to start my own nonprofit organization. Similar to Irma, I didn't really have a lot of experience. I honestly had no idea what I was doing or where it was going to go. I just knew I had this passion. I have this passion for outdoor adventure therapy, for environmental justice, for inclusion, for equity, for youth development. So I really wanted to put all of these things together. And so that's how Atabey Outdoors came about. And I also didn't want it to just be, oh, let's go like swimming, let's go hiking. Yeah, those are all really cool things, but let's also link these activities to important, valuable lessons that you can take on outside of Atabey Outdoors. Let's talk about environmental justice. Let's talk about what conservation looks like for you in your neighborhood. Let's talk about the access to food, water in your neighborhoods, and how we can help you get involved in creating, you know, opportunities for people in your neighborhoods to understand more about outdoors. And so that's how Atabey came about, and that's how I got here. And I feel honored to be amongst you all because I'm such a baby in the field, but really excited to be here and to learn from you all.
Thank you so much for sharing a part of your story. And to Irma and Jessica, thank you too. And I love the diversity of experience that we have here, and we all can learn something from one another. And I think that that's really exciting, and that's what's going to make this conversation great. And I also want to start off by saying, you know, I think that all of you are incredible environmentalists. And sometimes when we think of environmentalists in the general vernacular, a lot of people think about someone who is driving an expensive electric car and like buying all of these like sustainable things, when in reality, I think people of the global majority, Black, Indigenous, people of color, are some of the best environmentalists in the world because they simply can't afford to not be, right? I remember growing up and my parents always being like, turn off the lights when you leave a room, or like only serve yourself what you're going to eat, taking reusable bags to el mercado, reusing containers. I think we've all seen that meme of like the cookie jar and our moms put like all their sewing stuff in there, right? All of that are things that environmentalists and conservationists do in order to help our environment. So you all have touched on a lot of the questions that I have, but I do want to know, you know, when we're looking at organizations that focus on the environment and on conservation, we're really just seeing a handful of Latinas working in that space. And Raquel, you alluded to, you know, there being a lot of white people in that space as well. So what challenges have you all faced as a Latina in the field, and how have you overcome these? And Jessica, we'll start with you.
It's a good question. I will say that I've had a very privileged set of opportunities. I have not, outside of working for the White House, had to work at a predominantly white institution. I have had the ability to, because of the hard work of other leaders who built up organizations to serve our community, led by our community, I've had the ability to work in and for Latino-led, Latina-led organizations serving Latino and Latina communities. But in that same role, especially at GreenLatinos, knowing that the network of people in this field who are working at large, predominantly white-centered organizations face institutional racism, face gaslighting, face hardships around leadership development and even promotions, right? And many times isolation or feelings of isolation if you are the only person of color on your team, or, you know, within your department, or you don't see managers or directors or CEOs that look like you. And thus it's hard for you to imagine your opportunities for promotion, for moving up. So I've really actually had the opportunity to help create community for those individuals. And so, you know, I think that even in doing that, I would say that the challenges in helping to create community is that the need is so big, and the work, although very important work, is also hard work. It is emotionally taxing. And I think one of the things that's been incredibly important for me as an individual in this work is to find spaces that bring me joy, you know, and recognizing that I'm working in this field of conservation, and I love going to parks. So guess what? On the weekends, that's where you can find me. That's where you'll find me on a trail. You'll find me trail running. You'll find me taking new folks out. I just took a group of women of color on their first camping trip only a few weeks ago. Yes, you know, some people are like, camping? We're in Washington, D.C. I'm like, great, I got a car and there's a camp spot an hour away. And guess what? They still have phone service. So if your boss calls you, you can still pick up the phone and you'll be in a beautiful, lush forest, calm and relaxed, where you can answer really hard questions in the space of a very joyful, meditative space. So I think for me, it's been that challenge of isolation, but also making sure that people find places of joy and solitude. And sometimes that's literally going to a park.
Thank you. Irma, you have been appointed to boards. You've worked with the Clinton administration. I feel like you have been in a lot of spaces that don't have a lot of people like you. So what are some of the challenges that you have faced as a Latina, and how did you overcome those? You're muted.
There. I think I've overcome it because I have such a rebellious spirit since I was a little girl. And I have to tell you, the water board that I sent out is the regulatory agency for 2 counties, Los Angeles and Ventura. And the water world is a world that's probably one of the most racist platforms I've ever worked in. It is, the majority of the people who create policy are white men. They feel it's their issue. Coastal groups feel that why are we so involved? And so that's why I want to urge everyone to apply for boards and commissions, because we need our voices there. Usually when I get appointed to both, when I was appointed both to the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy and I'm also on the Mountains and Recreation Conservation Authority, is you ask questions that have never been asked. You know, the big term equity came out like 2 or 3 years ago, and it's like people are using it to kind of get in with you. Well, I described my nonprofit 15 years ago as an environmental equity organization. So I've been equitable for years and years and years. It's not, you know, the term of the day for me. And so when people say I'm come with the spirit of equity, I said, the only thing we have in common is how we spell it, because it's to say, hey, I'm okay. You know, I believe in equity too. I don't necessarily care about the words that they use. What I care about is that let's look at where I've been accused of, well, you don't see any Latinos or people of color at the water board testifying. And I hear that from coastal groups. And my answer to that is you're absolutely right. And let me tell you why. Let's look history. First of all, you guys, since the beginning of time, established the water policy, and you're continuing to establish and advocate for a certain water policy that your communities and where you live usually benefit from. I said, in addition to that, you're able to be here because the foundations give you monies to hire a scientist and a lawyer, you know, and we don't have access to that because there's no equity in foundation giving. I think there needs to be economic equity besides racial equity and all sorts of kind of equity that really provides us with the tools for us to do that work. And it has been very challenging because when I first started Mujeres, they said, what the heck are you doing? We don't need another environmental organization, you know. And so I received a lot of kickback and pushback, and frankly, for the first 5 years of the organization, I wasn't paid a salary. But I really believed in the power of the mujer and her family. And it was my husband who supported me and the organization so that we can move forward. And I think I spoke with heart and soul. I'm very intelligent. I believe in challenging authority. And you have to tell people what it is like, not what you think it is like. We have to be very honest about the circumstances. If anybody, first of all, Raquel, congratulations on the work that you do. Jessica, it's so unbelievable to see you once again after quite some time. And Stephanie, Mariana, thank you. You know, it was very lonely 15 years ago. And I got a lot of criticism, like, who the hell are you? Where did you come from? What's going on with you? But I just felt that Mujeres had the right to have their voices heard, especially in neighborhoods in which they lived with. They know what's good for their children. We don't know. I mean, even in the communities that I currently work in, I don't speak on behalf of the women. I don't know what's good for them. How dare I have the audacity to think that I can know what their challenges are and what they want and need for their children in their neighborhood. So I'm creating more women with rebellious spirits as far as I'm concerned. Because I think the Latina has been historically underestimated. And it really bothers me when they hire one Latina or one African American or one Asian in a predominantly white organization and say, hey, we get it, we understand it, we got Lola Rodriguez, or we got Jaime this. You know what? And they would piss me off because they bought into their talk. You know, I am the sole Latino and I'm gonna, and you're saying, what the heck? I said, you're working for the man. What are you talking about? I said, I don't work for the man. I work for my community. And that's what's given me the kind of power. And I think that a lot of us have power and influence, but for some reason, we just don't feel comfortable with saying, oh my God, I'm powerful, I'm influential, I'm a game changer. I say it loud and clear because I've worked very hard for where I am. And I'm no longer, I remember I was brought up to speak when spoken to. I had 6 sisters, and my father says, I'm not saying anything to you, speak when spoken to. And so I think I'm rebelled against all of those notions. Like, as a Latina, why would you know this? And when you're brought up in a Spanish-speaking household, you got to learn English. And a lot of things when I went to college were brand new to me. I went to the University of California, San Diego, and I was involved with MECHA. I was involved with a lot of the Latino organizations. I describe myself as a Chicana activist. People says, oh God, I know what era you're from. But the truth is that the Chicano movement instilled in so many of us that confidence to speak up and speak out, that confidence to point out what people do to put us down, to limit our opportunities. And, you know, I still have challenges. I mean, right now, I think, Jessica, you talked about access to the coast. Well, I'm creating Vamos a la Playa. I don't know if you can see it. And that's our new logo. And what we're doing is that we're taking communities from Pacoima, from the Valley, from Northeast LA to the Malibu beaches, which in California, coastal access is a big issue, but it's the biggest issue in Malibu, where they call it the sheriff on you. When I was the chair of the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy, they took me on a tour and they showed me this beach called Lechuza Beach, which is this beautiful beach. And I go there, we couldn't get off, so I went the following week, and I'm going down this beautiful cobblestone, passing multi-million-dollar homes in Malibu. And this man's water, and he says, where are you going? So I'm going to Lechuza Beach. I'm calling the sheriff. You're trespassing. I said, well, I'm calling the ranger because I'm not trespassing. Here's my card. I said, we have rights to be on this beach. Every beach here is a public beach. So what are you talking about? And I'm someone who's, pretty assertive, and but it kind of scared me. I went to the beach, put my toes in the water, and I thought, who knows what they're going to do to me? So you can imagine now when I'm taking busloads of folks to the beach. And Jessica, if you're in town, join us. We're going Saturday to Escondido Beach, and then in August we're going to be going to another beach. We're going back to Lechuza Beach. But we got to get that fear out of people's heads, you know, and put, I mean, in their hearts, and put facts in their head. And that's what we do really well. And I think that we cannot get pompous about our work, because at the end of the day, you have to be very humble, because the work that we do is a big sacrifice. You know, it's hard work. And not only do you have to deal with the realities of who's in charge, because you always think they will ever be in charge. In Los Angeles, in LA County, Latinos are now the majority. but we're still being treated like the little minorities that people thought we were years ago. And so I call people out. I said, no, you're wrong. I said, have you looked at my most recent victory is to be able to have several public meetings regarding the development of parks, regarding our Measure W on water quality, that all meetings are now have Spanish translation. And that's something we've got to demand. If we want our communities to be involved in these issues, they need to be able to understand what's being said. And it's a right for them to have Spanish translation. It's a right for them to be invited. It's a right for them to have a place at the table. That is what's so important. So at the end of the day, I see Mujeres as an organization that instills confidence and holds the women's hands. And I'm always amazed at how I learned so much from these women, because these women are luchadoras. They're unbelievable. They're powerhouses in their own right. And they challenged me. And my staff was freaked out when they challenged me, saying, "You're wrong, Irma." And I said, and I was so happy, and I was laughing, and they go, "What's wrong with you?" I said, isn't this what we want? Isn't this what we want, to inspire women to challenge what they think is wrong? I mean, that is when you know you've succeeded. That's when you know that you're on the right track. I don't want people to be yes-sayers to me, especially a mujer. How dare she? How dare she allow me to get away with stuff? So I operate with the environmental world in LA County is one of the most racist I've ever worked in. And I've worked in private sector, local, state, and federal government, and those are pretty racist too. Organized labor, but nothing like the environmental world, because there's so much privilege there. It's really a lot of racism there and classism there. And I think we have to call it for what it is. And, I'm older, maybe twice as age as some of you hearing me, but you've just got to keep the spirit and be strong about it. I just don't put up with stuff anymore, and people know that. And I say, okay, wait a second. You just finished telling me ABC, and the reality is you've never been to that park. You don't know what it's like. You don't know what the community is like. You don't even know what the community wants. You don't have the right to speak on their behalf. So we need to start calling people out, especially our friends. There's white friends, and then there's white people. And when I say white people, it's people who have that very exclusive, privileged way of looking at things, that the only people that exist are people that look like them. So I'm not anti-white, I'm anti-white people. So that's the difference that I see, that we all encounter, but we got to call them out, because how else are they going to learn? And our silence has allowed them to continue their nonsense. So we need to stop being silent. We need to start calling them out. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing about your experience, for plugging that people should be applying to boards and commissions. Like you said, a lot of these institutions were not made for us, and they continuously exclude us, which is why at Latinas Represent, we're so focused on telling people that they need to take up that space, right? The way that we're going to change these boards and commissions is by being part of them. The way that we're going to change elected office is by being part of that. So I'm so happy that you said all of that. Thank you. And thank you for taking people to the beach. My next question is about, access. We know that so many communities of color in the US live in areas with limited access to nature and or the resources to even go outdoors. Why is it so important to get our communities outdoors, and how can we do that? I'll start with Raquel. Tell us a little bit more of your organization too, since that's what you're focusing on.
Yeah, so kind of to also just say something for the last question, I think that goes also along with this question, is that when I was growing up, I was so just enamored with the outdoors that I didn't realize I was the only brown person in all my groups. And I was like, it wasn't until I was an adult that I was like, oh, wow, I don't hang out with a lot of people who look like me outside. And so just recently, I feel like I've really made a decision to, be authentic in what I'm trying to do with Atabey Outdoors. And the only way that I can do that is if I begin to bridge the gap between my community and the outdoors. And so I think when I was working in Chicago at the rock climbing gym in Chicago at Brooklyn Boulders, there is this disconnect between the rock climbing gym and the Black and brown community. It was only white people who could afford to go to this rock climbing gym. It was only white people who got memberships. It was only white people who walked through the door. And so I started to become kind of uncomfortable with the situation. I'm like, I'm the only person who looks like me in here. I think we should change this. And so I brought it up to my supervisor and I said, I think that I would like to take on the role of trying to get more Black and brown people in the gym. And so I asked him if I could be a community outreach specialist, just create a position that would go out into the neighborhood and into different nonprofit organizations to see why, to Irma's point, they didn't even know why these people weren't coming into the building. And it was because of the lack of access, the lack of resources, and the lack of knowledge. They really didn't know what rock climbing was. They didn't even know there was a rock climbing gym in their neighborhoods. So I wanted to go out there and I wanted to give them the facts to help them understand, what rock climbing is about, what they could be exposed to, and what they could learn within doing this sport. So I think with Atabey Outdoors, I think what I'm trying to do is just expose people, especially kids, at a younger age with those facts that Irma's talking about. It's like we sometimes wait too long into our adulthood to realize, like, no, wait a minute, I belong outside. I belong doing these things. I like doing these things, and I want to do these things with other people who look like me. And so I think giving those kids the opportunity to do that at a young age is important because, a lot of our community grows up isolated, or they grow up in their little crews, their little cliques, their pods. And I think that it's important for us to come together as a community at a young age and be able to talk about important topics together with other kids. And so, and it's important for them to see us as Latinas and as Black and brown people, adults, doing those things that they also enjoy doing, and knowing that, they could come to us if they had any questions or if they felt excluded. There was no one like that when I was a kid who I could look up to and say, hey, like, what do you do when you feel lonely within a bunch of white people when you're outside doing fun stuff that you like to do? like I had nobody to ask that question to. So I think it's just important to be that resource for these kids and be that bridge, because honestly, a lot of them don't even know. I mean, have never been to the beach. A lot of kids from Phoenix, Arizona have never seen a beach and don't know what it looks like, what it smells like, what it feels like. And so bringing those kids to the beach is monumental, and it's something that I want to be a part of. I want to do so.
Thank you so much once again for the incredible work that you do. And Mariana, you work on coastal access and public education, as well as talking to stakeholders, policymakers. Can you tell us why this work is so important to you? And, if there has been a pivotal moment that you feel like has really changed your life, or that you feel like you've impacted people in a way that made it really special to you?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. And I think a lot of the stuff that, Jessica, Irma, and Raquel has spoken to, I have definitely felt as an immigrant coming here when I was 8 years old from Mexico. I actually landed right next to the ocean, about 20 minutes away. And it wasn't really accessible to me. I didn't spend a lot of time when I was a child in these spaces, even though I was right next to it. And a lot of it it had to do with lack of transportation, not feeling safe in those areas as an immigrant, not knowing if those areas were for me, and also just, you know, that economical challenges. My mom was a single mother of 4, so she didn't have time to take me to the beach after work or, you know, take me out there. So again, like Raquel was mentioning, it was in Jessica, I believe too, it wasn't until I was older that I really started to appreciate, you know, the ocean and the space, and putting my feet in the sand and feeling that ocean breeze, or hiking a mountain and seeing the ocean overview. That did not happen till I was already 19 years old. I was a single young mom. So I think just to speak to a little bit more of those challenges, right? You know, a lot of the social economic challenges that I had led me to become a single young mother. But it also did not want me to stop accessing these areas and showing these areas to mis pollitos, like I call my daughter and my son, or, you know, the next generation. So I think it's really important. Representation with intention really does matter, because growing up, I lived here, we would go to field trips, but the people that we were showing us around did not look like me. So for me, it wasn't a space for me. So I've worked a lot in educating young children, introducing them to the ocean here. I used to work at a local aquarium here in Monterey Bay. So a lot of that work, doing it in both languages. Language justice is such an important piece to all of this, and not just translation, but also that cultural relevancy that Irma was talking about. You know, if I call a fish, it's shaped like a football, si digo eso en español, and it's not going to resonate with them. It's a soccer ball, right? And so having, you know, our cultura ingrained in there, you know, este pez se ve como un bolillo rather than a football, right? So things of that nature. And for me, that is incredibly important to connect our communities to nature, because we already, in many ways, we have already been connected to nature. It's just kind of having that reconnection for many of us, you know, going back to our roots, nuestras raíces. And, you know, this is incredible, important work to make sure that we are actively advocating for these spaces, for climate justice, for water equity. And so all of that, we need to be speaking up, and what the best first step is to get back into nature. So that's something that I really admire from all of you amazing luchadoras in this panel, especially Irma. Thank you so much for taking people to the beach, for relocating and reconnecting them to the ocean.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mariana. We're running, I'm looking at the time and I'm like, whoa, we're almost at the hour, but we do have some questions coming in from the audience. So I had this one on my list as well. So what advice do you all have for when looking for jobs or maneuvering the workplace and encountering fake equity? For example, being tokenized to do equity work, but organizations aren't actually aiming to combat environmental racism. I will leave it up to anyone who wants to take a stab at this one.
I will say, find practices to take care of yourself. If you are being asked to do work that other people are not invested in, it will impact how you approach that work. But that should not in any way be how you value your work. Your work is valuable, even if other people do not value it as valuable as they should be. So I would say equity work is hard work, but take care of yourself, find allies. You know, we, as Irma said, you know, there are white allies who have begun to do their personal work and understanding their privilege and understanding how to utilize their voice their ability to maneuver safely in these environments, and I like to say that word safely in these environments, understand how they can support you. Try to maneuver and find those white allies in your spaces, either directly in your organizations. I would even say in other organizations or other businesses that are doing similar work that you're being asked to do, so that you can utilize not just what's happening internally, but what's happening externally in your area to really help kind of push your work forward or push others to value your work in that way. So yeah, those are some of my tips. Don't let someone else's evaluation really dictate how you value your work and how you take care of yourself.
Thank you so much. Another question that we have is, do you have any advice for Latinas entering the professional environmental space? Irma, you're muted. I think you're talking.
Find yourself a mentor. Find another Latina, because they'll tell you, I wish I had a mentor, but I had a mentor myself, and it was painful, to tell you the truth. And so anytime that any Latina or woman comes to me and says they need help, I support that woman, because it's rough out there, especially if you are in the environmental world. Many times she's the only one there, the only person of color, the only one who truly understands the community, because they're from the community. So I would align myself to, even if it's an elected official, another community-based organization, another community leader. They don't have to be an environmentalist, because it gets lonely when you're the only one. And when the only one, people like tearing you apart, frankly, because you are threatening them. Because when you speak out of knowledge, because you're speaking out of your own personal experience, because of your culture, your history, your traditions. And so you make a lot more sense than a lot of the folks who are talking about, well, how do we get into that community? And blah, da, da, da. So I would align myself with other women, in particular Latinas. I think it's very important. I'm aligning myself to younger Latinas because I feel so out of the loop. I mean, I gotta understand what's going on in the younger generation, so it's never too late to associate yourself with Latinas of all ages and women who have a common purpose and a common goal. And I think that's what we need to do more of, instead of being competitive with one another. At the end of the day, if one of us succeeds, we all succeed.
Thank you so much. And I just want to add in that you'd be surprised at how many people are open to receiving like a cold call, an email from you and saying like, hey, or even like an Instagram message, hey, I really admire your work. Do you have 20 minutes to talk about it? I'm really interested in entering this space. Like, so many people are going to be open to that. So please don't be ashamed to reach out to someone. We appreciate that. So please make sure that you're reaching out to mentors. And like Irma said, it could be anyone of all ages, and mentorship relationships go both ways too, right? Sometimes I think as Latinas, we feel like, oh, we're taking so much time and we're taking so much energy from this one person, but they're also learning something about you and your generation and things like that. So it's so important to keep that in mind. And then I'm going to ask one more, if everyone could just maybe give us 5 more minutes, if that's okay. One more question is, what are practices or ways to remain grounded in your knowledge, voice when faced with imposter syndrome, or ways that many of these spaces are dominated by whiteness and male dominated as well? So how do you stay grounded? What keeps you motivated?
Yeah, I think for me, the way that I stay grounded is, reconnecting with your community, reconnecting with your local waterway, your local familia. Is a really good way to do that. And when it comes to imposter syndrome, I think it goes a little bit towards, reconnecting with other Latinas really has helped me to know that I am all powerful. I do have a voice, and my voice matters. And I think when I hear other Latinas speak like I am today, it kind of reaffirms that for me, and what makes me want to reconnect and reach out more.
Thank you so much. Raquel, is there anything else you want to add about what keeps you grounded?
I was going to say a couple of the same things, is community, making sure I spend time in communities like these, in the the local community garden, just leaning on community to affirm the decisions and the choices that I'm making. And also what keeps me grounded is just knowing that this is all for a purpose. This is all for our future. This is all for the future of this planet. And if I can help in doing that, or I can have a small part in helping to do that, then I'm going to do that. I'm going to do whatever it takes, or whatever I can.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else that has something else to add?
I would like to say that it's really important for you to know your moral compass and to set guiding principles for your work and for your life, because values are very important, although they're very, ethics is something that we don't talk about often. And I think that our parents instilled these kinds of morals. And even running a nonprofit, we have a moral compass, we have guiding principles, and people say, what are you talking about? Well, when we're in a tough situation, we go back to thinking about that. You know, a moral compass is one of the most important things that you can have and understand. So I would encourage you, if you're lost and confused, that you have a self-talk with yourself and find that moral compass and set some guiding principles for the way you lead, and the way you interact with folks, because we all have all this. I think that we have a lot of power, and we have a lot of influence that we can make other people's lives a lot better, especially community. But we can't get full of ourselves that we have all the answers. If anything, I think I have more questions than I have answers for folks. So I would encourage us to find our moral compass.
Jessica, anything else you would like to add?
Yeah, my last thing around just staying grounded and staying in this work, and something that has been incredibly important for me in those spaces that are lonely, because there still are some spaces that are lonely, is to learn history and to about our people and about my own family, and to remember the legacies of people who have done this work for so long, right? I think that we can look to amazing heroes in our communities that are well known, like Dolores Huerta and others, but we should also be looking and remembering and inspiring and loving on our living legends like Irma, and loving and remembering folks. I sent an email to Irma not too long ago, a couple of days ago, about remembering Robert Garcia, who recently passed away, and was a environmental justice champion at the national level and in Los Angeles and in California, who sadly passed away last year. We need to remember those folks who paved the way for us. We need to remember and drive power from their legacy and in the fight that they ensued forward and that we're taking on, and knowing that this is not a new fight. This is a fight that has been literally burning since colonialism stepped on the lands of our homelands, right? And that fight has been one that we've continued and has continued to burn in us, and we continue to push that forward, and we are resilient because we are still here, right? And it is our duty to continue that fight forward, but to find joy in doing this, because that's the only way we remain resilient, is also finding joy, finding happiness, and remembering that what we're doing is not for las ganas, right? Like tener las ganas or ponernos las pilas, but also like to laugh and to love and to remember and to bring mariachi to a senator's office, which sometimes, people might find strange, but it's love, it's joy, it's bringing joy into the fight. So remembering to do that and finding ways to do that is important.
Thank you all so much for all of the incredible advice, for sharing your stories, your perspectives. We're getting so many thank you messages coming into the chat. I can't take the time to read all of them, but everyone is so thankful for this conversation and appreciative of you and the incredible work that you all do. So thank you once again for joining us. As a couple of just, housekeeping items at the end, we have recorded this conversation. We will be sending it out to those of you that registered. We will also be sending out information to each of the organizations that participated today: Mujeres de la Tierra, Atabey Outdoors, Next 100 Coalition, GreenLatinos, and LatinasRepresent. Please follow all of us on social media, and feel free to reach out to us via social media as well, or check out our websites. And thank you once again for taking the time out of your day to be here with us. And once again, thank you to our wonderful speakers. We appreciate you and your incredible work. Hope everyone has a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.